Life Reflection, Part 2 of High School. So I'm going to begin this episode in a slightly different way than most episodes because I actually did a recording of a sort of story from high school that I remember quite fondly. It's not really necessarily like just one moment, but it's like a lot or a series of events that covered AP US history, basically. I call it the one time I cheated in high school and cheated as in like cheated on a test or something like that. But it's not really actually cheating. It's kind of like just cheating the system. And I'll go ahead and play that clip now. This is a story of how a high school boy cheated the system in AP US history in order to secure an A in the class for not just myself, but for probably at least 10 others in the class. I'm actually pretty proud of this one. And gasp, proud of cheating? What blasphemy. Well, at the time, I personally didn't consider it cheating and I still don't. But you can tell me what you think in the comments below after hearing what happened. Let's get started with the story. In junior year of high school, my US history teacher, who I'll call Mr. S, was a pretty cool teacher. He would teach us how to skim a textbook if we didn't have enough time to read all of it. He would also do some fun lectures where we played a Jeopardy-like game while answering US history questions. But the best and coolest thing he did was offer retake exams. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we had a 50 questions, multiple choice chapter test that contributed to the majority of our grade. And a week after those exams, he gave students the choice of a retake exam, which if he took, he would use the average of the 2 exam scores as your final result. And some important notes. The retake was taken before the original exam was given back to you. So we didn't get to check our answers or anything beforehand. So the rules were set, but what happened? After taking the first test, I got around a score of 85, which is not bad, but I thought to myself, I might as well try the retake since I doubt I'll get a lower score. After taking it, I discovered that it was essentially the same test, but with the questions presented in a different order. I ended up getting an A this time for the retake, somewhere close to a 94, but I felt like I could do better. With the rules in place, I got to thinking. There's definitely something that's just easily exploitable in the system. And it's the fact that the questions and answers are exactly the same in both the original test and the retake. So I thought to myself, if I were to just memorize all 50 questions and the 4 choices and write them down after the original test, I can always get a 100% for the retake. Definitely exploitable. It just takes more than one to exploit it. So the next step I took was talking to my friends. I introduced the plan to them and told them that as long as we have 10 people, we can memorize 5 questions and their choices, which in my mind felt very, very doable. I was definitely wrong. To my high school brain, this was as easy as dividing the questions and telling who to memorize what. But now that I understand that people have varying levels of cooperative abilities, it makes sense that I quickly learned that things weren't going to go as smoothly as I first imagined. The first few executions of this plan resulted in a scrambled mess of questions and answers that I got from people who either forgot to remember their questions or felt too pressured by the time limit to do the task. It was still more helpful than having nothing, but I needed to rethink the strategy. So what happened next was that other people heard about what I was doing and asked if they could join. I ended up creating this Facebook group that consisted of around 15 people, which was probably a little more than half the class. This time around, I actually assigned 10 questions to myself and made a more redundant system of assigning 2 people the same set of 5 questions. This almost worked. Once again, there were a lot of people who either forgot or couldn't do the memorizing for whatever reason. But we managed to recreate about 75% of the questions. For the answers though, it was simply way too difficult to remember all 4 choices. Either way, I gave the partially reconstructed test to the group and we all managed to get a better score on the retake test. Still, it wasn't perfect. So I tried again. 3rd time's the charm. This time, I assigned 10 questions to myself and another friend who was very consistent and reliable. If both of us could remember about 12 questions, that would be almost half the test. And at this stage, I gave up on assigning questions to people who were consistently not contributing and just assigned 5 to those who sometimes contributed. And for the answers, we would just need to remember the one we chose because luckily, a few of us were already getting scores like 85 to 95%. We could also just find the answers based on the questions, so it wasn't necessary to remember the answers. All right, 3rd way of doing things and 4 to 5 retakes later, how did it go? Surprisingly, it went pretty well. I got used to the process and was able to remember 15 or so questions, while my friend also contributed the same amount of questions. And from there, I would just ask others what their questions were, and I was able to reconstruct about 45 out of the 50 questions. At this point, we had a pretty solid system, and the retakes were a breeze. I remember my friend mentioning how she finished the retake in about 10 minutes and had to just wait around so she didn't look too suspiciously fast. Retakes from here on were basically all 100% scores, which made it extremely easy to get an A in the class. The only thing was, I stopped sharing the entire reconstructed questions with everyone and only to those who contributed. So some people were a little dissatisfied, to the point where I actually heard some talk of people who were friends of friends talking to Mr. S about what I was up to. I also remember a friend of mine who, after the first retake, realized what the group was and felt like what I was doing was not right. At the time, I definitely felt like I was a bit of a rebel because of it, so I did my best to keep a low profile. Luckily, Mr. S either didn't actually hear about it or just didn't care, which I was very, very relieved about. Because in my mind, I was essentially just doing what one person could theoretically do, which is memorize all 50 questions on their own and write it down to restudy for the retake. All I was doing was combining the efforts of multiple people to do the same thing. Many people called it cheating when I described it to them, but I honestly never bought into that. If you want to call it cheating, I'd call it cheating the system. But actually, that's what I called it back in high school. I feel like now, I wouldn't even call it cheating the system. I still very much played the game within the rules that Mr. S set. I just played it really well by collaborating with others to do what I couldn't do alone. And if I'm to be completely honest, I think the irony is that the people who contributed the most and got the most from our collaboration would have gotten A's in the class anyways. I got a 5 on the AP exam and thought it was probably one of the easiest AP exams I had in high school. I took 7 of them. So it's not like it made a huge difference. But I'm proud of it because it was probably one of the first times I had an idea and gathered people to try to execute that idea, and it produced some good results after multiple tries. This is probably my high school ego talking, but I highly doubt anyone else in the history of Mr. S's classes has done or will do the same thing. A part of me wants to believe that Mr. S did hear about my scheme and ended up chuckling instead because of how ridiculous it was. And a part of me wants to believe that he didn't bust me because he respected all the effort I put in just to get a better grade in the class. Probably just wishful thinking, but it's fun to imagine. Anyways, that was the story of that one time I supposedly cheated in high school. I still don't consider it cheating, but what do you think? Let me know what kind of high school or college shenanigans you guys pulled in the comments down below. I'm curious. Was I the only one who was ridiculous enough to come up with schemes like these? I hope not. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Okay, and that was basically me talking about it. It was a fun time in high school. That's sort of like my mindset in high school, was just to like strategize, get A's, get good grades overall, prepare for AP tests. I ended up passing basically all of my AP tests except for one. There was, I think I mentioned all the AP classes I took in the previous episode. But I guess I can just quickly mention them again. It was overall in my high school life, it was AP Bio, AP US History, AP Calculus AB, and also AP Calculus BC, AP Physics, AP Economics, AP Government, and technically I took AP Japanese 4, but I did not actually take the test, primarily because I didn't feel like I would have passed it, because honestly in high school Japanese class, I feel like I didn't really learn like that much, but it just might be because I feel like it's a long time ago and I just know way more Japanese now. So compare now to back then, I just feel like I didn't learn that much. But it was enough to actually pass the exemption test in college, so I didn't need to take a language in college. And thanks to all the AP tests that I took and passed, I was able to basically graduate 1 year early from college. I'm not going to talk about college right now, but it was thanks to stuff I did in high school that I was able to do that and graduate 3 years, because it gave me like credits that I could use. And I was pretty satisfied and happy overall with my high school academic life. I didn't really mention that too much in the previous one. I was at the end of the year, or end of the everything for high school, I was number 9 out of 715. I remember being very proud of that. number 9 out of 715. It's a good amount of students, and I was top 10, and they had this whole rally for the top 10. I thought it was really fun, or it was a glorious moment basically, and they gave us like parking passes where we're allowed to park at like a different part of the school that was a lot easier to park at because it was less crowded, and also easier of a walk because it was connected right next to the school versus like having to walk past a few like lanes. So that was really cool. I actually still have the pass. It's like just hanging on my drawer. But there was also like something on the transcript that showed like your ranking if you exclude freshman year, because for me, freshman year, I wasn't really, I guess I just wasn't as interested in academics. Like I think I started to get more interested in it in sophomore year. If you were to exclude that, the transcript showed me as number 3, basically. So I didn't even realize that. I had no idea. I kind of just like got the transcript being really, really high up there, despite not doing anything special in my head. Basically in high school, I only got 2 Bs and the rest were As. And the one AP test that I did not pass actually was AP Government. And I bet you anything, the AP teacher was very, very surprised by that, because there was like this one day in AP Government where he was announcing something. He was like, oh, the first person to ever like get a perfect score on this practice test, blah, blah, blah. And then when he said it was me, I was like, what the heck? I was very, very confused because yes, I did study for that test, but I wasn't expecting to get like a perfect score because it was kind of a massive test. It was like, I remember it being 200 points, and it might have been like 100 multiple choice questions or something along those lines. Just very, very like a lot of multiple choice questions, either 100 or 200 of them. But somehow I got every single one of them right. And I just honestly did not know how or why. I just studied, and that's what happened. But I got a serious case of senioritis. When senioritis just means like, you're tired of school, you're sick and tired of it, and you just check out. And that's what I did pretty much during senior year. I started to get a bad habit of just dozing off in class, like napping and everything like that. So I didn't pay attention in most of my classes towards the last semester of school. And yeah, that wasn't a good thing. I think that habit ended up rolling over into college. So we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I was not ever able to pay attention in class ever since, like, from my memory, it was like almost all of senior year, but it was like worse when it was the second semester. And that was when the AP tests were like at the end of the second semester. So I just like totally checked out, especially in AP Government. I remember there being like debates or like speeches or whatever. And I was just like playing like online chess on my phone, or Chinese chess actually, not regular chess, and just like Go and just random stuff basically. And there's one time I forgot to turn off the volume, so like it was like just blasting when I opened it, and it was a very embarrassing moment. But yeah, I definitely checked out real hard, and that's why I ended up failing that AP test, because I just really could not care, because we already got into our colleges and stuff, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna take the test, I guess. So I ended up passing the rest of the tests with 5s actually, because they were just generally easier for me. Like math is probably one of the easiest subjects for me. Like all of it has always come really, really fast. Like in my opinion, math is the easiest subject out of all of these subjects, because it's cumulative as long as you keep up and just like, remember how things are done. It's very, very logical. So like, it's just making sure that you know what the set of rules are and then applying the rules properly. I guess I also played a lot of board games when I was in high school. So that helped, because my cousin, the one who actually was the wrestler that taught me about the Tootsie Roll stuff, he mentioned, there was one time I hung out with him in high school as well. Like I visited Florida, and he mentioned how like, you seem like you would be a good lawyer because you're really, really good at reading rule books. Cause we went to like a board game shop one time, and we were just exploring board games. We opened one, and then I just like blazed through the rule book and started like setting up the game, and we just played. So it's just something that I've been able to do because it's sort of like you just recognize patterns, right? So like I've played a lot of board games, so learning a new one isn't that hard because a lot of board games share similar rules or at least like similar patterns. And that's sort of like what math is, in my opinion. It's just like a set of rules that just build on each other. So as long as you remember each rule, it sort of all just makes sense and fits together. And that's why I thought it was the easiest subject. English was probably the hardest subject. That's like for AP English, I got a 4 in it. And oh yeah, I do remember that one time that the teacher gave me like the Student of the Month award. I think there were only like 2 or 3 people who got it. And he gave it to me because he thought my analysis of, I think it was something about the American Dream, like a book related to that. He thought my analysis was really good. And for me, I remember spark noting that book, I think, and only reading some of it. And most of the analysis were sometimes a mixture of me paraphrasing what was on Spark Notes. So I guess I just paraphrased really, really well. But he also said like my essays in general were really like good. Like I had good ideas. And my my Asian history teacher in college also said that as well. He said like at the very last day of class, he just stopped me and was like, Scott, you're a really, really smart guy. You need to speak up more. You need to talk more, because I was like a very quiet person. So I was very, very encouraged by them too, because I feel like there was this one time in 6th grade, I don't think I mentioned this, but there's one time in 6th grade in the GATE program where after taking a test, I had to retake one test in the English section because I was very bad at it. I did worse than everyone else. And the teacher was like, just try your best, hopefully you can improve, like read like this, all that stuff. And I just had a hard time reading. I had a hard time focusing while reading, remembering what I read. And I just did not do well on those types of tests in general when I was in elementary school. But I definitely improved over time. And by the time I reached like the end of high school, like I'm pretty sure I was either average or above average in terms of like being able to do that. And in terms of writing in general, I don't think I got really good at it until I started journaling, actually. Just journaling a whole bunch starting in college and doing that for about 10 years now. Like writing comes a lot easier to me. I won't say I'm like an amazing writer. I'm not, but I'm someone who can write at least video scripts and journals and just have it be cohesive and deliver it cohesively as well. It's good enough to be decent writing in most cases, concise, to the point, has a point, is well structured enough to convey the point in a way that is digestible. So yeah, that's sort of my academic life around high school and sort of like the background getting to high school and a little bit after as well. And for the sciences in general, sciences, it's a lot of memorization, but at least for physics, there's a lot of logic behind physics. So until you get to like quantum physics, but for the most part, like most general physics that you learn, like mechanics, optics, thermal physics, electromagnetism, all that stuff, like it's pretty logical and follows a lot of math. Like math was invented to actually explain physics. Like that's what Newton did when he invented calculus. He wanted to understand the motion of the celestial objects, which basically is like stars and planets. So I thought that stuff was really, really cool. And that's why I was super into physics in general. And that's why I chose to study it in college. But in terms of high school itself, interestingly, I'd say one of my favorite classes was AP Economics. I thought the teacher in that class was really, really good, despite the fact that I napped a lot and my friend definitely noticed. It didn't matter because I got like really, really good grades in that class. But I just thought that in general, like all of it made a lot of sense. And the teacher was really good in that he was cool, he was nice, and he told us that out of all the years he's been teaching economics, and it was like for a while, like 5 or so, our class was the best class he's ever had because our bell curve for statistics, right, was placed, like the middle of it was placed around the 90% score. So, like 90% is an A. So a bell curve normally would probably like the average of the middle of the bell curve is normally around the average, right? And average, I guess, is for grades is like considered a C. But for our class, for whatever reason, we just had a bunch of smart people in that class, I guess. That bell curve was closer to 90%. I thought that was like really, really cool to hear. And I do remember that class being stacked in terms of like the smart kids, because when there was that rally with the top 10 and everything, like I think 9 out of the top 10 was in that class. So it sort of made sense. And for me, I was friends with everyone that was in the top 10. I was friends with everyone that was in probably top 20, I'd say. So it was like fun to compete sometimes on grades. Like we were that type of friend group, I guess, who would be like, oh, what'd you get on this grade? What'd you get on that? And then we would compare scores. And then, if your score is higher, if my score is higher than them, they would be like, oh, I hate you and stuff like that. So that's sort of how my high school life was like in terms of academics. And after I quit drumline, oh, by the way, I wanted to tell a quick story about drumline. There was this one time where we were like putting back equipment into a truck. And then there's this rack that has like a sharp corner. And when I was pulling in one of the marimbas, someone's pushing it, I'm pulling it. I looked back really quickly. It was nighttime. And I was like, okay, we're rushing because we gotta go. And then I look back, I hit the rack with the near my eye, actually. Luckily, it wasn't at my eye. Otherwise, my eyeball would have flew out. But what happened was I just started bleeding from like a hole near my eye, and my whole, like half of my face was covered in blood. And I still remember like he was the pit leader at the time. I still remember his face. He was just like so surprised, and he was like, oh shit. He like said it so viscerally and like loudly. And then he just rushed to go get someone for help. And I was like, oh, what happened? Like, I just didn't feel much. I just felt like a liquid coming from the right side of my face. And I still have the scar till today. It kind of just looks like acne scar, to be honest, but very, 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 it was like a moment where I almost died, maybe, if that thing hit me closer to my eye or closer to my temple, I guess. But it was high enough impact to cause a lot of bleeding. Don't remember that it felt that painful, to be honest, but interesting moment for sure. Anyways, because I quit drumline, I was able to join B-Boy Club, and I definitely practiced a lot, hurt myself quite a lot. I think that was one of my biggest regrets in my life. It's the fact that I just did not do it properly. Like, honestly, get a teacher for those kinds of things that are slightly dangerous. I practiced flips sometimes at home and would hurt myself. And I feel like I attribute it to one of the reasons why I'm shorter than I am, or shorter than I should be, I feel, because most people in my family are generally like, they're not necessarily, at least all the guys in my family are taller than me, but the girls are either my height, around my height, or slightly shorter. And I'm 5'6", so I'm pretty short. But so to me, I'm like, okay, I feel like I should be taller than this. Like, I feel like just based around my family and everyone else around me, I should be just a couple inches taller, I guess. Maybe that's what every short person thinks, but it's sort of like this thing that is true in science, actually, that gymnastics and certain activities are proven to actually compress your body and just cause you to not grow as tall. Like, I don't know how proven it is, but I believe it 100% because I feel like I experienced it by doing way too much harm to my body when I was in high school, where I should have been like growing the most. So that is something I definitely regret. But I can't do anything about it now. And I did have a good amount of fun just like practicing breakdance with my friends, learning a lot of flips and just learning flares. Like, flares was like the big move for me, and I got it by the time I was in college. So lots of dance related things, and I believe we'll have like a topic dedicated to that later, so we won't get into it too much here. But after a while, or not after a while, but during the whole school thing, I feel like I didn't practice as much, or I didn't make as many, I wasn't as committed as the other breakdancers, I guess, because I would always hang out with my girlfriend after school and stuff like that instead of being at the club and practicing. But I would still practice a lot in general and outside of the club time. And this is a sort of random thing as well, but it's a story that I find pretty relevant to high school. It's like a moment where I sort of grew distant from a friend, and it was his birthday, and I gave him a card. And in the card, I wrote down like, I I wrote some nice stuff, and then I was like, even if we're like not as close anymore, or like I wrote something that basically stated that our close friendship was in the past now, and it was just like something that wasn't like quite present anymore, and that was a pretty dumb thing to do. I still gave him the card and everything, but it's unfortunate that it ended up that way, and he kind of took it in the wrong way, and we ended up just not being as close after that moment. He was one of the people in Drumline that I was really good friends with, and that we had a pillow fight with. So we shared a good amount of moments, but sometimes friendships just don't last, especially, when you're a high schooler. Like, you don't really have too many like strong sense of loyalty, I suppose. It's like you're still in school, you're just friends in school. Like, you haven't experienced too many life things together yet. You're not quite matured yet, so it's very easy to just like hang out with the other group instead of this group. So it makes sense. And speaking of groups, you know how high school is, there's like groups all the time. For me, I hung out with the Asian people, I guess, the most. In my school, it was kind of like, I actually don't remember the spread, but I know that the Asian people were somewhat in the minority, not the complete minority. It was kind of like barely a minority. There was a good amount of Asian people, so maybe like 40%. But either way, like, we had our own sort of subset group of people that we just like all knew each other, and it was fun. There was like sort of this divide between like the cool Asian group versus the normal Asian group, I guess. But I kind of hung out with both groups, so I knew people from both groups, and I think I wasn't quite like a part of one group in particular. I was sort of a wanderer in some ways. I don't think until senior year is when we had like a more established, like, oh yeah, these are the friends that we usually hang out with during lunch or during after school or during morning time and stuff like that. I would also hang out with like friends from different grades. There was one friend who I actually knew from elementary school, which was really, really like a cool coincidence. The only friend I knew from elementary school that was also in my high school now, because she also happened to move, and we became good friends pretty much immediately after she was in the same GATE class as well. So she was a fifth grader while I was a sixth grader, and that's how I knew her. And eventually, actually, we became good friends. And in senior year was when I wasn't with my girlfriend. There was a period of time where we broke up. We eventually got back together in college, like later. But I guess I'll maybe tell that story a little bit. But basically, what happened was, she ended up, she might be the only girl that has in high school, like, that fully confessed to me, I think. Because the other ones in high school, like, it was more so just either unspoken or like something where I like basically had to make a move, at least for my girlfriend, my high school girlfriend. And for this one, she actually confessed to me and told me, and it was very interesting. She was shy, so she actually used like paper to write it out. It was very, very memorable and interesting. And I told her I needed to think about it, and I think I was kind of a jerk. I ended up like being close to her and holding her hand one time, and after that moment, I ended up telling her that, I actually feel like we're not suited for each other. So I did kind of reject her, and I felt bad about it, especially since I basically sent the wrong signal. But somehow we are still good friends now. So I'm glad for that. But yeah, there was like another subset of people I hung out with that was basically her year. Because I was good friends with her, I ended up making friends with people from her year, and I hung out with them a good amount. I still hang out with some of them to this day as well. And yeah, it was really nice to be able to do that, like be able to hop between groups and just like talk to people and sort of feel like a connection with different people, not just the same group all the time. I think that was sort of like the beginnings of that personality trait for me, I'd say, because I very much feel like I love socializing these days and just like being parts of different groups, being like able to talk to, let's say, like more creative friends, or talk to more tech friends, or people who are computer science based, or just talk to people who are generally just friends from high school, and not necessarily like a specific genre or type of friends. So yeah, there's a lot of like, you know, high school friends, college friends, friends that I made after college, creative friends. There's a lot of people to talk to and that have a lot of different interests, and it's very fun basically. And I got a taste of that in high school, I would say. In the meantime, actually, during high school, I still managed to hang out with some of my friends from elementary school. Like occasionally we would revisit that area because we had family there, and for other reasons as well. And I just enjoyed every time I got to see them. I actually remember like the first day of 8th grade for them, I was around the area because my mom had to do something around there, and I was walking towards the school, and the friend that really helped me through 8th grade by sending me like voicemails and just being there and everything, the one that I care about unconditionally, like she just like ran to me and hugged me. And I still remember that memory. It was so nice. It was like to be missed and everything. And I just, yeah, it's another really nice memory with her. But I would also hang out with my first grade friend a lot, and we would just walk around, talk about random stuff. We love talking. Like that's been a theme for our whole friendship. We just love talking about random stuff and coming up with random ideas and countering each other and saying like, that doesn't really make sense. Some debates, stuff like that. Definitely we were out of our depth back then, I'd say. We would talk about things that were out of our depth. Like we didn't have enough knowledge to really form conclusive, good opinions, but we did anyways as kids, as teenagers. Now I'm willing to fully admit when I don't know something and when I just don't have enough information to form a good conclusion. It's not really humility, in my opinion. It's more so just honesty. It's like just be open with what you do and do not know. And, you know, the people around you who do know more, they'll help you out, right? Instead of pretending like you know more than you do. But yeah, I really enjoyed those moments. And there was also one thing I totally missed in 7th grade with my first grade friend and a couple of my 6th grade friends. I don't know why we ended up doing this, but we were hanging out one time in 7th grade, and we just sent a bunch of messages to like some of our friends saying that we liked them. And it was kind of like fake. It was kind of like just a prank. And my first grade friend ended up sending, or I think I was the one who sent that message through his account to one of my closest friends today. And at the time she was a good friend as well. And she actually kind of fell for the prank and felt like super embarrassed. So that was my fault. And I admitted to her that it was my fault. And yeah, she was kind of mad at me for a while, and mad at us in general. Like what we did was totally wrong. Like we messing with people's feelings and stuff like that. I don't remember who started it, to be honest. All I know is that we were just bantering as guys, and it just happened. And either way, I take full responsibility of having sent that message. And my close friend still teases me about it sometimes and says like I was an idiot. And yeah, I was definitely an idiot. That was 7th grade. I never did anything like that in high school. Luckily, thankfully. Instead, I was a different type of idiot who would occasionally, I guess, I remember there's this one time in 7th grade, there was this girl who would tell me that I was very flirtatious. And to me in 7th grade, I have no clue what that means. Like I had no concept of what flirtatious meant. And of course now I do, but I still do not understand what she meant by that. Like I genuinely don't know what it is. Like for me personally to have been flirtatious back then. Like did she mean that I was acting with humor? Like I was teasing her and stuff like that? Was that flirtatious? Or was I like, because I don't remember doing anything like super forward or anything like that. I just remember talking and having fun while talking, and that's it. But I mentioned that because I wanted to briefly mention that I was an idiot when it came to, I guess, romantic stuff. Not necessarily, because at least for senior year, when I wasn't with my girlfriend, when we had that break, I was like holding hands with one friend And there was no like communication. There was no like, oh, asking if we liked each other or not. We just held hands, I guess. And then near the same time, I would like hold hands with like a different friend as well. And there was also no like communication or whatever regarding that. And then the confession with the other girl as well happened. So, and then we actually communicated that one properly. So again, I've stated this back in 7th grade, but I'd say I also was not very like conscious in terms of like romantic relationship stuff. And when I say conscious, I just mean in general, like not having a good like moral compass, I guess, when it comes to the standards. But to be honest, like at that time, I did not have a girlfriend, and it was just like friends holding hands. So, and I was in high school, senior year of high school. Like, I don't think it was that big a deal, to be honest. It's nothing big, but part of me still did feel like it was not good to do that. So, but I'm sitting here reflecting, and I'm thinking like, did I think it wasn't good because other people would judge me for it? Or did I think it was not good because of some sort of like moral dilemma in me? And if I'm to be honest, I would probably go with the judgment from others, because honestly, like thinking about it from a fully matured adult perspective, like a high schooler just holding hands with one friend and then with a different friend is really not that big a deal. Like there's just not too much to it, in my opinion. It could be a bigger deal if like things went further than that, but like, yeah, that's basically my conclusion as of now. There was another interesting, or I suppose, thing I wanted to mention. It was just the fact that our school at the time didn't have any like thing related to CS or robotics, and I at some point wanted to try to do stuff like that because I was interested, but the school didn't have it. So like, what do you do about it? So I guess what happened was we ended up just trying to form a robotics club. And I remember this one conversation well. I was just like talking to some friends about it, and I was like mentioning it. Yeah, we should, try and build a robot just for fun, just for the experience. And then I remember my friend being like, yeah, I've been waiting for you. Yeah, I've been waiting for you to say something, to do something. And in my head, I thought it was such a strange response. I was like, why were you waiting for me? Like, why did it have to be me to start something? Like, and I think I had that thought for a long time afterwards as well. I always had this like thing about wanting everyone to participate equally. It's very, very, I'm sure it's a common feeling, but as of this stage, as of present time, I fully understand that some people just have a more like sense and personality for leading and leadership in general, and making stuff happen and initiating things, versus others who I'm not gonna like generalize and say it's just leaders and followers, but like it's versus others who have strengths in other things. Like if they're put to a task they're really good at doing, then they will excel at it. And it's not necessarily like it's not that they're like a follower necessarily. It's more so that like once you get them started or like ask them for help or something like that, like they will go above and beyond, is the way I see it, at least. I don't really like lumping people into just like two categories. But unfortunately, we ended up buying those things thanks to a friend who was willing to buy it for us, and then we would just compensate her using money from the club that we were trying to start. But we ended up getting the pieces, but we did it towards the end of school, which was a mistake because the pieces ended up taking time to actually get there. So by the time it got to us, like by the time all the pieces got to us, school was pretty much almost over. So we didn't really have time to build it. So kind of waited for too long, my friend, for me to start something. But yeah, I'd say my most fun years in high school were definitely junior and senior year. There was just this sense of like achievement, a sense of like camaraderie amongst my friends, and like working towards the AP test, doing breakdance stuff, like making friends related to that and working on moves. I just thought like it felt good to progress basically into the later years of high school and sort of feel like you're about to move towards something bigger. And I do remember towards the end of high school, like being like, yeah, I want to be like an electrical engineer or something. Actually, I feel like this is an important topic. So choices in colleges. So the colleges that I ended up getting into, or at least the one that I wanted to go to, was UCSD or UCLA. I got waitlisted for UCLA and I got into UCSD. And I guess SATs, I didn't really talk about that. So for me, I didn't study for the SAT because I was a lazy butt. And I ended up getting, I think my score, I forgot what the highest score was, but I got a pretty good score for math. There was also other types of SATs, like individual SATs that you could take. And I think I got like 760 out of 800 for math. And for the regular SAT, I got a really good score for math and my English was okay. So the final one was like 1960, something around there. I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember. But I know like it wasn't the best SAT score whatsoever. I really should have actually put effort and studied for it. I think at the time I was just like checked out. I was tired and I didn't like, I think I was also cocky as well. I just like didn't care to study. I was like, it's whatever. I'll just do it and it'll be fine. But honestly, I wish I did better with that because I think I could have gotten a better score and gotten into a better, I suppose like UCLA or something like that. But honestly, it doesn't even matter now. I feel like if that had happened, then I wouldn't have met the friends I met in college in Occidental. But UCSD was my choice. And okay. Yeah, this is a point of contention for sure. Just something that I really disliked. But what ended up happening was my mom was very, very concerned about this whole stuff. So she put me in counseling outside of the school. It was like this special counsel person that helps you get into a good college and everything. And I believe she paid a good amount of money for it as well. And I talked to that counselor and she was, I guess, helping me with writing the essay for some of the stuff, like when we were applying for colleges. And I feel like she kind of she put her hand too much into my writing, like too much to the point where I feel like at least 60% of it was written by her instead of me. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it definitely did not feel good for me. I was just like, I feel like that's not my work. I feel like what's happening, what's being said is not really a reflection of me, you know? And I thought some of her writing was a little bit too much. And I don't know what would have happened had I just like completely done it on my own. But I feel like it would have been different for sure. And in the end, she was the one who convinced me to go to Occidental because they had something called the 3-2 program where you go to Occidental and then Caltech afterwards. So you study for 3 years in Occidental and then Caltech. So I was like, okay, gonna aim for Caltech because it's a prestigious school and everything like that. So that was my original plan going into Occidental. But we're not gonna get into too much to college. Let's just say I ditched that plan and graduated in 3 years instead. But a part of me really regretted at the time, I really regretted choosing Occidental over UCSD, the school that I actually wanted to go to, because I basically was influenced by it. And it's a big decision, where you go, who you meet. It determines a lot, I would say. But at the end of the day, like, even though those were my feelings like early college years or like the summer before college, of having regrets and whatnot, like now, it happened and I met the friends I met. I have the friends I have. I went through the process I did. And I'm sure a lot of the reasons why I am the way I am now is because I went to the college that I went to and had the experiences I did there. And perhaps like if I went to UCSD, I really would have followed that like computer engineering or whatever path that would have put me on a very, very different life, I would say. And I don't know. I really don't know. It's a big what if. And I could be better off right now, or I could be like worse off. I don't know. But honestly, there's no point thinking about it. I just wish that I guess looking back even from now, like as a present time, how do I phrase this properly? It's not that I wish that I had done what I felt like doing. Yes, I do. But it's not like I regret it anymore. It's more so just like, had I gone back, I would have done what I wanted to do instead of being influenced by someone else. And there is a sense of regret. I'm not going to say there isn't, because of that, not because of the result, but just because of my decision making, and just because like I was influenced so much. I just felt like it was no longer my choice. It was no longer my like essay, my message, what I wanted. It was left into the hands of another. And I think that's like one of the worst things you can do, right? Is leave your big life choices in the hands of someone else. Like, for some odd reason, saying that, I want to like sneer. I want to be like, that is gross, and I hate that. Like leaving your big life choices to someone else. I can't. Like my whole soul rejects it. And perhaps, this is just me thinking on the spot. Perhaps that had something to do with like the way I am now. It's like based on that moment, having done what I didn't want to do and what was like pushed to do by someone else. Like I never want to do that again, right? It's like something I learned because of the regret I felt, which like ties back to like the first episode, right? The first chapter of me choosing the path. And it is like my choice. It is what I want and what I will fight for, basically. And to me, that resonates a lot. Like I want the choice to be mine. It's been a long time, but I feel as if a new oath for my creed is coming up. Like whenever I feel a very, very, very strong emotion from something, when I feel like an experience or a moment that makes me like, that triggers my soul to the point where like I need something to be said, like some oath to be created so that I remember it forever, so that I live by it, basically. And so far, every oath that I've created for my creed starts with, I will. For now, I'll just say, I will not let others choose the path that I walk. I will fight for the life that I seek. It's sort of like a two-phrased creed oath at the moment, but usually it takes some refining to get like the perfect words, but for the moment, that works. And like I said, it has been a while since one has been created, but like that moment in my life, it really, really like sent something down my spine, like into my soul. And usually my creeds are not negative, like I will not, but some of them are, very few of them are, but like I will not let others choose my path. Yeah, I mean, there's another negative one, I will not abandon others. And it's just because I feel and understand like what it's like to be abandoned, right? So I think that stands alone and it works quite well. I will not let others choose my path. Yeah, simple, clean, I like it, and it works. So that's a new oath that I just created based on this life reflection. And this is honestly the way that I believe values should be created. It shouldn't be like based on like reading self-improvement books and like hearing stories from other people and then like, oh yeah, that's a good value, I'm going to add it to my list. It's not that. It's actually having experienced things in your life and feeling what it did to you, what those experiences mean to you and how you responded, how you reacted, who you are based on all of those experiences and what you really, really value. And that's something I feel like is a part of me now because of that experience, because of a lot of experiences, but also especially because of that one. So yeah, that's, I guess you guys got a taste of how I've been creating these oaths for my creed. And honestly, I've been rambling on for quite a long time. So I think I'll end it here. Like that's basically the end of high school, right? Just like college admission stuff. I talked about my academic life, my social life, had a good amount of friends overall, different friend groups, spent a good amount of time with my girlfriend, as well as like this period of time where we weren't together in senior year and got a chance to experience what it was like to, sort of have a little bit of a romance with other people and not just my high school girlfriend. And then breakdance was a big one, drumline and band, certain classes and events that I remember there. Yeah, and just a lot of fun times. I remember playing a lot of cards with people all the time. Cards, board games, dice games, liar's dice. That was a big one in high school for me. I bought that game and just like introduced the game to everyone and just we played a lot. I still love that game. It's a very, very fun one. Yeah, overall, honestly, I thought high school was a good experience for me. Sure, there was some ups and downs, especially involving my relationship. And there were some, I guess, arguments, falling outs with friends as well that I didn't like mention as much, but I don't know. They're not that big a deal in my mind as of right now. And they affect me like almost 0% for some of them. And like, I don't view it as that bad. Back then I did. I was like sad about it, but I don't know. It doesn't really, I remember the good times mostly. And I remember the friends that I have now as well, and how we're still friends. And it's awesome. It's so awesome. And how people have changed as well. There are some people who were very, very different back then. I mean, like, I'd imagine after 10 or so years, you'd be pretty different. So yeah, so good times.